from Senator Wyden. There are rebuttals to what you just heard, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move to my colleague from Oregon, Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, let me just note that for years you have been working for justice as an Attorney General here in the Senate. I very much appreciate your leadership. And I think by way of just summing up in a sentence, and I'd like my full remarks to go into the record, and I'll just kind of summarize. What our bill is talking about is not taking away gun rights for law-abiding citizens. It's about closing a dangerous loophole that has put at risk American families and tragedies in Oregon and Connecticut and around the land. And I want to tell the committee briefly about Nicolette Elias. Nikki, she was called, Portlander. She worked for a number of years at Portland State University, a tremendous mom, a protective mom, 2 young daughters. On November 10th, 2014, she was murdered by an abusive ex-husband. She was shot, colleagues, in front of her children. In front of her children. And when she was killed, Nicolette's ex-husband was under a temporary emergency restraining order. Now, Nikki did everything possible to protect herself and her daughters. She reported that he had been physically and sexually abusive, that he handled guns out in front of the children. He left her threatening messages in the months before she was killed. She was fearful enough, Mr. Chairman, of what he might do that she worked out emergency safety plans with friends and neighbors. Now, the key point, despite the restraining order, there was no legal requirement to separate Nicolette's ex-husband from his guns. And what happened? As we know, in Oregon, Connecticut, and elsewhere, was a monumental tragedy. On that Monday morning in November, he took a gun to Nicolette's house in Southwest Portland, shot her 7 times. Then he took his daughters, 7 and 8 years old, to her home. Just imagine that. Just imagine that. Shoots the mom, takes the daughters to his home. When police arrived later, he walked into the backyard and took his life. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, nobody should have to endure what Nicolette's family has endured. I wish I could tell the committee that few people know what they've been through. But the reality is, as the chairman knows, there are a lot of people around the United States who know exactly what this is all about. Each year in the country, more than 600 women are shot to death by an intimate partner. 600 women. And Senator Blumenthal, the chairman, and I believe that Congress has a moral obligation to do something about it. Should have eliminated the loopholes that leave women in the crosshairs of violent spouses and partners with guns a long time ago. So as the chairman noted, we have a Lori Jackson, Nicolette Elias Domestic Violence Survivor Protection Act. We get at the dangerous loopholes. Dangerous loopholes. And what we're talking about, I say to my colleague from Texas, is not going to take away gun rights for law-abiding citizens. In fact, what we're talking about is backed by the majority of gun owners. When it came to trying to protect her kids and herself, Nicolette did everything right. She used all the tools. She went through the court system. She presented evidence, told her story. She did her part. And, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, her government failed her. So what the chairman and I are talking about is closing those loopholes. If Congress had passed the bill the chairman and I are talking about prior to November 2014, Nicolette might still be here today raising her teenage daughters. Last point I'm going to make, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulging me. It's been said that the gun safety debate was over when the Congress basically did nothing after these tragedies in response to Sandy Hook. And as you know, we've had tragedies in my home state. We live in southeast Portland, tragedies close to our house. The chairman and I just don't buy the idea that things were over when nobody did anything in response to the Sandy Hook massacre, and we're going to fight relentlessly against the hate that the chairman very appropriately described drove Buffalo based on the facts we have. Every man, woman, and child in America ought to be able to feel safe at home, at work, at school. Passing our legislation, in my view, I close with this, ought to be something that's beyond red and blue, beyond partisanship. We ought to do it because it's the right thing to do. Chairman, thank you for having me. I've got full remarks. If I could put them in the record, that would be great.
Thanks, Senator Wyden. Your full remarks will be in the record, but I just want to say while you're here that I really appreciate your advocacy. Like you, I refuse to accept that Congress is going to be complicit and, again, do nothing. I think there are areas where we can agree. We may agree to disagree on other areas with our colleagues. I'm very, very hopeful that this time will be different, and really appreciate the advocacy that you have provided on this bill. Thank you very much for being here.